Welcome friends, today I will make an overview of the game I created for the game jam that happened in the previous year. It had some issues in the gameplay, mostly because it was hard to understand what the player should do in the game. This is a puzzle game, and there is this limited help you can get from the menu if you open the manual. The manual is something that gets updated if you play the game. So when you start, you only have the basic information. The most useful page is probably this one where you see the controls, but at the moment you close the manual and go to the game, you can already forget about what the controls are. And this was not really intuitive for some players. So I modified the game a bit to make it more playable. Also, if you don't like the music or you think it's too loud, you can always adjust the sound levels. So let's start from the first level. You see, before the updated version, there were no hints like this. So if you forgot that you should press the enter key, you will get stuck because you don't know what you're supposed to do. And there is another hint that this is what you can control using your keyboard, but the most basic thing you can do is just press the enter right away, and as you see, the input ABC turns into the CBA, and your goal is to guess what input was encoded as this and this. But there is also some misconception that you have to match the output with the encoded keyword, and this is not correct. We will see why there should be a separation between this, but not right now. Let's try to solve this level. If you write 3 letters like this, it's the same. Basically, we need to take into the account how the element looks like. The input always goes through this direction to the output. You can see the little arrow here that tells us that it will go here, and then here. Let's write hello. You can probably already see what's happening, and this symbol is trying to tell you what it is. But if you can't read the symbol yet, this is fair, right? You see it for the first time. You can read this word backwards. This is what this element does. It rotates the words or inverses the word, the letters of the words, to backwards. Also, you can pause the simulation by pressing space. You see, we're here. And we got through this element, and if we press tab, you can see the current value is this. And that will be the output value, because there are no other elements. It's usually good to press pause and see what some element does if there are more than one in the level. But anyway, now we can say that if we read the word backwards, we should get the translation. What was the input to get this? So it's Seder. Oh, sorry. When you finish the level, there is some statistics here, how much you completed the game. Also, keep in mind that you unlock the new pages in the manual, and you probably want to read them, especially if you play the game for the first time. So if I press the enter, I will just go back to the menu to select the new level. But if I press the Ctrl plus enter, I'll get to the manual, and I will have an opportunity to read this. For instance, it explains that circles are inputs, outputs, the square is a transformation of something, the transformation depends on the icon there, and the diamond shape is something that branches, so it usually has 2 outputs. One is for the false and another one for the true branch. You might notice that after I completed the level, there is no second tick here. We will discuss this later, but for now we only need the first ticks here. So as you see, I said that the input is always a word. It's not a random thing that happens to look like this when it's in the output. because there could be collisions in the encoding, and some different inputs can turn into the same output, but your goal is not to find the output that is created from this input. Your goal is to find the word. An emphasis on the word. It's not a gibberish, like this is not a word. I mean, technically it is, but it doesn't mean anything. The word is something that is in the English dictionary from this definition. So let's try to do this. Usually it's a good idea to run the encoder with something just to see what happens. As you see, well, there is a speed button and we can make it slower or faster. Let's take a look. 1, 2. So you see, this is a diamond shape. It has some condition, and this condition is do this action 2 times. The action is the positive branch. So when it's less than 2, it will go here. But then it's not less than 2 anymore, it will go to the output. So basically, right now in this layout is basically executing this instruction twice. And this instruction, what it does, we can see by the output here. It turns A into C. C. How did it happen? Well, we execute plus 2 times. So it was B and then C. And we can verify that by using the value inspector. So you see, I paused it here before we hit it twice. And we see BCD. And for the second round, it's already CDE. So let's try to start deciphering. It's U, so it was S. It's J, and it was H. It was Q. I would say it was O. You can sometimes guess the word, like it's 4 letters here. And if you only need a few more letters, or even if the encoded keyword looks like a word, you can guess it right away. You don't have to decipher letter by letter. But for this example, we see it's E, so it's shoe. Also, if you press Ctrl X, it will clean everything. You can also use left and right arrows and modify the individual letters, just like in the normal input area. So it's K, it will be I, S, I would say it's Island. So again, we unlock something when we first meet the new kind of element. So if you're interested, you can read this. This manual explains a lot of things that can be useful. It's not necessary to read this, but the game will be more rewarding if you understand what you're doing, instead of just trying to brute force the algorithms. As you see, this is the first level when you have some branching that has hidden condition. And the encoding can go 2 ways. It could either apply this or this. The condition is unknown by default. If you open the terminal, you will see that branching info is unavailable. It will open at some point when we complete a few levels, and you will know the list of conditions that are encoded in these elements. You will unlock other things that are useful by clearing more levels. But for now, it's not really that big of a deal, because look, this minus means the opposite of plus, so it shifts the letter to the left. But there is also a second part of this, right? You see the mask. The first one means that it only affects the first letter. This one means that it affects only the last letter. By knowing this, we don't even need to understand what this does. We can guess it by looking at this. So it's either the first letter should be shifted right to recover from the minus, or the last letter should be shifted left to undo the plus. So RIA, we can see It's probably a C. C. Yep. You probably heat. This looks like an ocean, so let's see, yeah, ocean. When we complete the entire level, we usually also unlock the next feature, and for this time we unlock the buffer feature. There is a manual entry for that. I will show you what it does precisely. But first, let's try to hack this. This is an optional part of the game. If you see that we have already block 2 and it also has this secret keyword, and there are 6 major blocks in total that has, I think they always have 4 levels or 3 levels. It depends on the block, I guess. But there are also special levels that are locked right now. You can only unlock them if you solve the compound puzzle. And how do you do this? You see, this is the encoded keyword that was... it went through from the component 1 to component 2 to component 3, etc. So what we need to do is to write this down. This is the only place in this game where you probably want to write something down, mostly because it's a secret content that is not really mandatory. Part of the game is just understanding what you can do here just by following these hints. But I will show you how to decipher this one. So it's PKCU. If you take it here, now we need to understand what do we write to get PCQ. I will write it here. This is probably the case when we really want to know what condition does. But we can try both ways until it works. So if it goes this way, we need to take the first letter from P and make it Q, right? Probably not, because it goes from this direction, so it's not the proper way. Let's try modifying the last letter. Oh, I made a mistake here. It's PKCU. So it's T here. So the game gives you a sound cue that you did something right, and if you already completed the level, you can just go back by pressing escape, or you can complete the level again if you want, but that's not necessary. If you go here, now we have the unlocked encoded keyword for this step. We can write it down too. It's PKCT. Now we do the same with the second component. PKCT. This component does plus twice, so every letter should be decreased by 2. P becomes N, K becomes I, C becomes A, T becomes R. Yes. And now we need to do the last step. We can write down NIAR. This is the only case when you need to write something in the input that is not a real word, just because it's a compound encoding. And here we just need to basically read it backwards. Rain. And when we do that, we see that right now everything is unlocked, so we see all the hidden keywords here. If we go back, we unlocked the special block. It also has the levels. They don't have a compound keyword here, so there are just extra levels that are sometimes interesting. But if you only want to complete the base game, you don't have to do this. If you completed all the levels, I mean the components in the block, and also found the compound keyword, you will have this check mark. If you complete everything on 100%, you will unlock something special. The second chapter is not that much harder than the first one, but it requires you to apply some knowledge that you have. I will give you one hint that this level can be completed without going one step at a time. This is something that is that was really confusing for players. Let me show you the thing. Okay, let's see this word. If you try to add 1 to every letter here, like B, B, Q, I, you will get the same output, like identical to the keyword, but it's not right. To avoid the confusion, and as I said, the BBMQI is not a real word and it's not a compound key, so you shouldn't expect that even if it's encoded like this, it should be considered to be a right answer. You want to know what word was used to get this encoded keyword, because the encoded keyword is not something very interesting for you. It's like the password in the database that is not a plain text. You have this password in some cipher form that you need to reverse to the original word to recover the password, and this is something that occurs to involve an encoding collision when you have the same hash output, but it doesn't mean that you know the word itself. And for some of these elements, this can occur. So for the updated release, I'm making this red, so you can see that something is not right and the game is registering this. There is another hint here that this means the encoding collision. And one hint that should be used here is that some operation can negate each other. If you see this, it rotates letters by every one position. But there is also rotate left. So if you rotate right and then you rotate left, it's negated. This is what you need to keep in mind here. And in some other levels too. Every block, the encoding of the compound keyword becomes harder, as to be expected. There are more than... Oh, if you see a collision, and this is registered by the game, and you will unlock the manual page talking about this. There are more than 20 pages of this manual. I think it's mostly the content that you unlock during this game, apart from the special features. As we saw previously, we unlocked the text buffers. So what is this? A text buffer is something that helps you to copy paste the text. You see right now it's empty, but if I press Ctrl X, it not only removes the text from there, it also inserts it here. And if I press Ctrl V, it will insert the text there. No matter what was there, if I press Ctrl V, it replaces the text with what I just copied. You can also press Ctrl C to copy without removing, like in most text editors. So it could be convenient. It can also work as a hint for you. For instance, if you don't want to forget something, you save it to your text buffer so you can see it later, and then you operate on something else, and then you come back to the original words. Let's solve this one too, and then I will cut the streaming. So as you see, it moves, it rotates the words every letter and wraps it around. So C becomes the first letter becomes the second letter, the second letter becomes the third letter. So it's cap instead of ABC. But this is only if we go from this branch. The benefit of this layout is that we know that the upper branch is only operates on the first and the last letter. Also, we know that it rotates words otherwise. So if the words spells correctly, if we just read it with offset 1, it should be this branch. Sound. Ripud, no. No. So these both words are encoded by this branch. It would be C. It would be T. Crypt. This one, S. What? This is basically how you intended to play this game, by analyzing the encoded keywords. How can you exploit the schema before you? Because you don't have to fairly decode every letter by every element and understanding what every element does. But if you want to have some extra fun, you can try to understand the branching. The condition inside there, they're useful to know if you're trying to solve the compound key, the one that requires multiple components to be deciphered. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope now it will be easier to play this game with all these updates. I will probably think about something else I can improve in this game. If you have any ideas, you can write the comments and tell me. Tell me if you like this game or if you played the game and what feedback you can give before it's released. Have a nice day. I hope you enjoyed this video.